Kia ora and welcome to the Ashburton District Council's Annual Plan online community meeting. We appreciate you joining us here tonight to learn more about the draft annual plan. The plan is effectively our budget for the financial year ahead. It sets out what we're planning to do, how much it will cost, and how that will impact rates. So tonight we're going to take a closer look at each of these points, as well as answering your questions. Before we introduce this evening panel, here are some other ways you can find out more about the annual plan. This is our consultation document, which has an easy to understand overview of the draft annual plan. We'd encourage you to have a good read through and give us your feedback, either on the form attached or online. You can request these from our office or instantly access it online at itsourplace.nz. It's Our Place has a wealth of information about the draft annual plan. You can download the consultation document there to see what we're planning to get done and learn more about the decisions that we need to make. On there is a rates tool as well, so you can see what the rates are proposed to do at your place. And once you're ready, you can easily submit your feedback online. Visit itsourplace.nz to check it out. Tonight we're joined by a very experienced panel that will explain a bit more about the draft annual plan and answer any questions that you have. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and we'll start first with Mayor Neil Brown.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Neil Brown. I'm the Mayor of the Ashburton District Council, and we're here tonight to answer the questions on our draft annual plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Hamish, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, Hamish Riach is my name. I'm the Chief Executive of the Council, and it's really my role to manage all the staff to give effect to the policies and plans that the Council put in place.
Thanks, Hamish. Next up, we are joined by Neil.
Hello everyone, my name's Neil McCann. I'm the Group Manager of Infrastructure Services, responsible for roading, the three waters, stock water and rubbish and recycling.
Great, thanks Neil. I would also like to welcome Paul to the panel this evening.
Yeah, good evening everybody. I'm Paul Broker. I'm the Group Manager of Business Support. Hopefully I'll be able to answer questions regarding finances and property related issues.
Great, thanks Paul. And last but certainly not least, we have Erin with us here too.
Hi everyone, I'm Erin Register, the Finance Manager at Ashburton District Council. My team collate all the activity budgets from the various activity managers across Council and fund the activities based on the revenue and financing policy set by Council.
Excellent. So as you can see, we've got a real panel of experts here to help answer your questions. And tonight we'll be submitting the questions that you have as the community to them live. So if you do have a question about the annual plan, enter it in the comments or chat box and we'll start putting these to our panel shortly. But before we get to the questions, let's take a very quick look at what the draft annual plan is all about.
The annual plan could also be called our annual budget. It shows what we're doing, how much it will cost, and how we'll pay for it. But first let's look at the bigger picture. All councils, including ours, have a long-term plan. It sets the goals that our community wants to achieve over 10 years. Our current long-term plan was adopted last year and it plans right out to 2031. We review it every 3 years, which means consulting with you, our residents, to check we're on the right track. In between these reviews, we still need to respond to new challenges and produce a budget each financial year. This is where our annual plan comes from. So what are the challenges this year? First, the big one, inflation. The cost to purchase goods and services has risen sharply in the past year for the council, just like everyone else. The pandemic continues to put pressure on our finances, both through supply chain issues and lower customer numbers and revenue at some of our facilities, such as the EA Network Centre. The May 2021 floods affected everyone in our district, but also our road network. We've been working hard over the warmer months to recover from the impacts of that flooding. 3 yearly property valuations. Because property values have grown much faster in urban areas compared to rural areas, increases in rates will generally be higher in urban areas. Government regulations such as higher drinking water standards means we have to continue investing in extra infrastructure. And climate change will impact our natural and built environments, meaning we need to start future-proofing our local infrastructure and economy. So how do we plan to address these challenges? Wherever possible, we've reduced our budgets for our day-to-day services. For example, we've cut costs by reviewing the opening hours at the EA Network Centre. We've delayed a few capital projects, including the new driveway entrance at the Domain Promenade, and an upgrade to Balmoral Hall. We're proposing to use our forestry reserves to bring forward our major roading repairs program. And to help meet higher national drinking water standards, we're continuing to invest in our infrastructure, with major upgrades in Methven, Mount Somers and Rakaia. As a result of these challenges and the work we're doing, we're currently sitting at a 9.4% average rates rise, compared with the 7.8% indicated in our long-term plan. So we have two major decisions that we'd like your feedback on. First, should we review our day-to-day levels of service? We've already reviewed operating costs. However, we could make deeper cuts if the community supported reducing our levels of service in some areas. If you do support this, where do you think we should make those savings? And number two, do you support us using $1.7 million from our forestry reserve to accelerate our major roading repairs program? There's pros and cons to both of these topics, and we'll explain that more in depth during our question time with the panel.
So that provides a good introduction for the annual plan. But me and Neil, what do you personally see as the key issue facing our district over the next 3 years?
Well, there's a few there, Tony. COVID is one of them. We've been through 2 years of COVID so far and coming to, well, hopefully the end of it and get some back to some normality so we can get back to normal. Roads is another big one. The repairs and maintenance of our roads. They got hammered pretty hard in the floods of May last year. We're still getting them up to where they should be. So we've got some money in the budget for that. Inflation's really impacting on our budgets this year, and we've factored that in. And another one we've got is government regulation. It's imposing costs upon us, and especially in the Three Waters area. So there's some that are dear to me, I suppose you'd say.
Thanks, Mayor Neil. As we saw before, we've got two main topics that we really want feedback on. The Mayor has talked a little about providing an extra boost to roading, but the second is further reviewing our day-to-day services to help ease rate increases. Perhaps, Hamish, you could talk about what this means and what has already been done in this space, please.
Yes, certainly. So the budget process is really detailed and thorough, and we prepare a draft, if you like, across all activity. We compile it all, we bring it through to council, and we go through it line by line. And trying to meet the needs of all areas into a sensible budget. There were a number of reductions made from the first draft that was prepared. It included the changes at the Network Centre, as you've already heard mention, but there are a number of other savings in areas like how we use consultants, the manner in which staff might attend training and conference expenses, and a number of other things. So a very thorough effort to try and get the budget into the shape that it's currently in.
Thanks, Hamish. Finally, before we come to your questions, as we've seen, we currently have proposed an overall rates rise of 9.4%. However, it's important to understand that's an average across the whole district. The actual increase for each ratepayer will vary depending on several factors, not least of all, property value.
So, how are rates calculated? Rates are just one source of council income. We also get funding through loans, fees and charges, and subsidies and grants. The rates you pay also have different components. There's fixed charges that apply to every household. There's targeted rates that pay for services and amenities specific to the area you live in. And then there's general rates for services used by all ratepayers, which is based on your property rating valuation. Rating valuations are carried out independently every 3 years and are the best estimate of your property's value as of 30th of June last year. They're purely for the purpose of rates and may not reflect your current market value. You can search for your current rating valuation at qv.co.nz. Despite the common misconception, an increase in your property value doesn't necessarily mean an increase in your rates. And an increase in values across the district doesn't mean the council collects more. Instead, it helps us work out everyone's proportion of the rates. If your property value increase is lower than average, then it's likely to have little effect on your rates, or might even mean you pay less. While a higher than average property value increase could result in higher rates. In mid-Canterbury, like most of New Zealand, we've seen a sharp increase in property values in urban areas compared to relatively flat or small drops in property values in the rural areas. This has been reflected in revaluations completed in 2021, which will mean rates increases will generally be higher in urban areas and lower in rural areas. It's worth noting that in previous years the situation has been reversed and rural areas have paid more. While the percentages this year are high, it's also worth looking at the total dollar amount, as we still compare favourably with similar districts. To find out the proposed rates for your property, check out the rates calculator at itsourplace.nz.
Now that we have the background covered, we come to our panel. Please, just as a reminder out there, if you're watching from home, if you have any questions for our panel, pop them in the chat box or comments and we'll get to them. We've got some initial questions to get the ball rolling based on what we've seen online in recent times. And the first one is for our Mayor. And the question is, what's the downside of using forestry reserves? Why not just use all that money now to reduce the rates?
Yeah, to use all of the forestry reserve now would then leave us without reserve for the future forestry investment, which is important to remember that forestry reserve income is used to offset rates. So reducing the reserve too much now will impact our future rate increases. But it has been used for offsetting rates before, the forestry reserve, and we have done it previous years, and we've run the account down quite low at times, and then when we cut forestry down, it gets built up again. So we need to be prudent, not take too much out, but use it wisely.
Great, thanks Neil. Hamish, here's a question for you that's come up. Has the budget on the Civic Centre blown out, and what will it be? What will its impact be on rates?
No, the budget hasn't blown out. As Council has signalled to the community, there's no question that the budget is under pressure. And I think everybody who's trying to build anything at the moment understands that there is supply chain issues and material is sometimes slow and usually more expensive than it previously was. Labour shortages, the COVID impacts have all impacted. So it is absolutely true to say the project is under pressure, but Council is taking a very close eye on the project, eliminating little bits and pieces here and there in order to keep it under budget and maintaining a close watch. So not true to say the budget has blown out, but definitely a project that we are keeping a very close eye on.
That's a great update. Thanks, Hamish. Mayor Brown, and back to you for this next question. Why are councillors getting a pay rise at the same time that you're trying to cut costs?
Yeah, good question. Our pay rate's set by the Local Government Commission in Wellington, and we have no say on this. We have to take it because that's the rules. But like anyone who gets paid a salary or wage, they don't have to keep it. They can choose to give it away if they wish.
Great. Thanks, Mayor. Erin, here's a finance question for you. What about people who might find it tough financially right now? What options do we have to keep our rates affordable?
We accept that some people are struggling, and to lower the rates, we would need to reduce levels of service in some areas. Council is required to provide core infrastructure to set standards, for example, the drinking water, the wastewater and the stormwater, but there are some areas that could change if that's what the community wants. And we also have alternatives to paying rates in case anyone's not aware of that, for example, by direct debit, weekly, fortnightly or monthly.
Great, thanks Erin. And how would they find out about those? Is it simply just a matter of calling council?
Yes, just call the administration block, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Paul, here's a question for you. Could you please give an example of what a lower level of service might look like if we were to reduce rate rises that way?
Yeah, there are many ways to lower the level of service. We could reduce the opening hours of some or all of our council facilities. We could reduce the maintenance in our parks and reserves. For example, we could let the grass grow longer before we mow it. It really comes down to what the community is willing to accept.
Great, thanks, Paul. And that's the very heart of one of our key questions on this consultation. Neil, this is definitely an infrastructure question and probably quite a technical question. So up in Methven and Methven Springfield, there's a new membrane treatment plant being installed this year. Does this mean that the upgrades will get rid of boil water notices for Methven?
Yes, it certainly will. The new membrane treatment plant will provide microfiltration, which will provide the required quality assurance to meet the drinking water standards. And that's even after higher rainfall events when we have high turbidity in the water. So there should be no further boiled water notices once this plant is complete and finished.
Great. Thanks, Neil. That's really, I'm sure it's a very highly anticipated project up there. So for our viewers, we're going to do our best to get to all of your questions, but if we do run out of time, don't fret. Our team will be staying online to reply to any questions that are missed. So heading over to some of our live questions that come in, we've got a question here from Sally on YouTube, and Hamish, I'll direct this one to you. The first part of the question is, why is Council developing a destination management plan when tourism is contracted out to Christchurch NZ?
Yes, good question, and you're quite right. Christchurch NZ does do our visitor promotion, and it is they that are going to develop the destination management plan for us. Essentially, they're developing an overall Canterbury destination management plan, and because of our contract with them, Ashburton will be included and part of that planning.
Excellent, and thanks, Hamish. Sally's got some further questions in the economic development space, and she's asked a question about what is the COVID event plan?
Well, perhaps I can answer that one too. The COVID event plan is really a response to the pandemic and the expectation that life will start to return to normal. One of the big impacts in New Zealand from the pandemic has been to the event industry, and we've all seen a lot of media coverage of a whole host of events that get cancelled because of the uncertainty of the COVID pandemic environment. So part of the work that we'll be working on is how do we come out of COVID and get back to an environment where we can try and attract events and enjoy events for the community. So that plan will be turning its attention to that matter.
Great, thanks, Hamish. Sally's also asked if Council intends on delivering annual events like it did in the past, such as Light Up the Night and Bite Night, and also asks how much these cost. But perhaps that can't be answered yet until we know what the plan is?
No, in terms of the detailed cost, I'll have to look that up specifically and get back, but it's certainly Council's intention to return to an events program that all the community can enjoy.
Excellent. And the last part of the question from Sally, Hamish, is if Council has ever considered outsourcing economic development to the Canterbury Chamber of Commerce in the same model as tourism.
We've certainly considered outsourcing it, and previously Council had what's called a CCO, a council-controlled organisation called Experience Mid Canterbury, that was involved in visitor promotion, and Grow Mid Canterbury, which was the organisation for wider economic development. And when that organisation wound up, we reviewed it all and felt that we were better to deliver economic development in-house. That having people here in the organisation was a better way to reflect the direction that Council was setting, to understand the community, and to be better connected to the needs of this district. And we've kind of felt that an agency like the Chamber of Commerce, or even in this case Christchurch in New Zealand, is just that little bit further removed from the Ashburton district. And that's not to the community's advantage. So for the moment, that's a function that we're pleased to be running in-house.
Thank you for that very comprehensive answer, Hamish. And Sally, if you're listening, you've asked some detailed questions around costs of Light Up the Night and Bite Night. We'll endeavour to get those back to you. We just need to go and look that up. So thank you. Next question we have is from Shirley on Facebook, and there's two questions here. The first part of it I'm going to put to you, Mayor Brown, and that question is, when will the domain upgrade begin?
Yeah, good question. We've got a 30-year plan which we developed about 2-3 years ago for the domain, And if you looked at that plan, you'll see when and what is going to happen over that 30-year period. We did have a new roadway going to go into the domain, was planned for this year. This year we're in now. That's now not happening. It's been postponed because of cost. And we're also going to put in a promenade along the side of the Walnut Ave side of the domain, pathway for cycling and walking, etc. And that has also been delayed because of cost. But what we are doing this year is the edges of the ponds have been falling in, and this year, I'm meaning the next financial year, they've been falling in and dropping away, so they're going to be fixed up. And that is in this year's plan. Also, there's some new lighting to go in the domain this year as well. And I think also some rehabilitation of the irrigation system on some of the fields.
Great. Thanks, Neil. And further to Shirley's question from Facebook, Neil McCann, I'm going to put this question to you. And that's if council is considering a pedestrian haven for taking pedestrians safely across West Street from Wills Street or from the Art Gallery Museum. So that's over West Street, the State Highway, and over to the Overbridge. Is this planned currently?
This has been raised many times, not only by the community, but by our Road Safety Committee. And it being West Street, which is a state highway, it is up to Waka Kotahi to authorise that and to work on making that possible. They have told us that there is concern with safety at that crossing. However, we are continuing to work with them and see if that can be, if there's a workaround. But we won't give up on that. We'll keep on trying.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Neil. Excellent. Well, we're heading into the finance world now, Paul and Erin. So we've got a question from Murray on Facebook, and he's got 3 questions. The first are, what are the council manning costs for 21 compared to 22-23? What is the increase or decrease in staffing cost? And what is the planned expenditure on consultants or contractors for the forecast year compared with the current year?
Those are quite detailed questions. I might have to look those up and get back to those. But if there's another couple of questions coming in, I'll try and research that in the meantime.
Yep, that'd be great. Thanks, Paul. And a further question from Murray on Facebook, and this is probably to you, Neil McCann. Murray has a question about the methane membrane plant and asks if it will allow for growth and use and if it will eliminate chlorination of the water.
Yes, the plant has definitely been sized for future growth. And also it is a modular design, so even in many years to come, it's easy to add modules onto it to accommodate for even further growth. And the second question regarding chlorine, I mean, we are required to chlorinate to meet drinking water standards.
Excellent, thanks, Neil. And those drinking water standards, they're being, I guess, imposed on us by central government, is that correct?
Yeah, and they haven't changed. It's just that the requirements and the regulation is getting tighter, and they are clamping down tighter on councils and raising the bar effectively.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Excellent. Here's a further question for you, Erin, perhaps. This is a question on how much do projects like Balmoral, oh my goodness, excuse me. How much do projects like Balmoral Hall affect our rate increases?
Usually those kinds of projects would be loan funded, so they wouldn't be the whole project funded via rates in one go. It would be a portion of principal and interest each year over a 20-year period.
Great. Thanks, Erin. Just got a bit of a lull on our questions at the moment. So I'll just, oh, Paul, thank you.
Yeah, Tony, I'll be able to answer a couple of those questions. Our personnel costs, if you like, were estimated to be 18.4 million in the LTP. They're now 19.7, so that's a $1.3 million increase in personnel costs over what we had estimated in our long-term plan. The consultancy costs, I'll have to do a bit more work on that. So I'll get back, I'll answer that and we can post that information later.
That's great. Thank you. And Murray from Murray, on Facebook, if you're listening, we will get back to you on those ones. So thank you very much. And Paul, here's another question for you, thinking about year 2 of the LTP. What were the key drivers of the 7.8% rate increase in year 2 of the LTP?
In the LTP, we had included an inflation estimate. That was a range of inflation estimates. So we, depending on the category of expenditure, but it ranged from about 2.2 to about 2.9. So an average of about 2.5% of that increase is inflation. Water was probably one of the biggest contributors, with almost a 2% increase in inflation just to meet the new water standards. And then the rest of the increases were scattered across various activities of council. So it was inflation of 2.5, and the water, drinking water costs increased by about 2% of the rates take as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate that. Last call for questions, folks. We've got plenty of time, so if you have any burning questions that you've got out there, please don't hesitate to send them through. We've got a great panel of experts here ready and waiting to answer them. So Neil McCann, here's a question for you with regard to water infrastructure. We've talked a little bit about the amount of water infrastructure going on in this draft annual plan. Could you give us some examples of what water infrastructure we are getting in the next 12 months, please?
What we are installing in many of our plants is UV treatment, and that's required in terms of Protozoa compliance for our drinking water standards. So a lot of the upgrades are involving in the installation of UV treatment, the devices and the building to accommodate the UV treatment. Other costs are increasing our cost in monitoring and reporting on all our treatment plants. That's needed to step up and provide more of that monitoring and reporting. So that's all included in the additional costings.
Great, thank you. And that looks like all the questions we might have. If you do post a question in the next couple of minutes, we'll come back to it. Otherwise, pop them up online and we'll answer them after the session. We will reply to everything that we do receive. But before we go, me and Neil, why is it important that people give us their feedback? Oops, Neil, I think you might be on mute. Neil? Neil, sorry, I think you're muted.
This time.
Thank you.
Right. We need to hear from the community to see that we've got the balance right for the rates. So it's important for you to have your say and to see that we get the best job done for you. So please put in a submission, tell us your thoughts, and if there's ways that you think we can cut some money out of the rate bill, do it, tell us. Or even if there's a project that you think we should add in, tell us that as well and we'll consider it. So we'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Either write it down, email it on the paper, any way you like, phone in, any way you like, we'll like to hear from you.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Mayor Brown. We do have one very lucky last question that has just come in, and this is from Kathy on Facebook. Hamish, I might pop this question to you, and she's just asking for a summary of why it is such a high rates increase, please.
Yes, it's such a good question. When thinking about this rate increase, I go back to the long-term plan, which was the document, the 10-year document that we developed last year, which involved extensive consultation with the community. That plan included a rates increase for the coming year of 7.8%. So the principal difference between the 7.8 and the 9.4 in the draft annual plan is an increased allowance for inflation. The 7.8 included the sort of works that you've heard a little bit about tonight that Neil's spoken about in infrastructure. But the real difference between the long-term plan year 2 and this draft document has been the effect of inflation moving from around that 2.5% well, we're making an allowance of 5. We know it's even higher than that in the current economy. So we want to still do the sorts of things that we said we would do, but we know that it would be highly unlikely that we could get all that work done for the year 2 long-term plan amount. So lots of projects on the go. We do commend the plan to everybody to have a look through and see just how much work is going on. But the real reason for the increase changing from the long-term plan is the impact of inflation.
Great. Thank you, Hamish. It certainly has been a challenging budget to get to this point. We do have a little wee flurry of questions coming in, so we'll open those and we'll carry on with them. Me and Neil Brown, I'm going to give you this next question, please. And this is from Mason from Facebook, and he's asking if we actually do listen to feedback.
Oh, most definitely we listen. We have, you send all your feedback in, it gets collated into a book, and the councillors get that, and they get about 2 weeks to read through it and read every submission. And some people like to actually come in and present in front of the council as well. We read the submission on paper and they come and add to it in voice, and we, the councillors and the mayor, get to ask them questions as well to see that they're telling us we're getting the right story from them. So most definitely we listen.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and as having been on the other side and being involved with those processes, they are in depth, they are thorough, and every submission is very closely scrutinised. So every piece of feedback we get is highly valued by our elected members. Paul, I've got a question here for you from Shirley on Facebook, asking why can't previous year's surpluses be used to cover this year's rates increases?
We budget for a balanced budget, which means that every year we try and match our expenditure with our revenue. So often there's not a surplus to be carried forward. If there is, we identify it and take it in as part of the budget. Normally there's not large surpluses to be carried forward, but if there is, we take account for it when we budget.
Great, thanks, Paul. And Mayor Brown, this is a question for you. And this is from Kathy on Facebook. And she's asking, what are the sorts of things you plan to do in this council in the next 10 years as a summary?
That's a very difficult question. 10 years, especially when it's outside an election cycle, which is only 3. So we only guaranteed 3 years in the job. And you may know this is election year coming up. So the team we've got at the moment, the mayor and councillors, are only guaranteed another 6 months in the role. And come the election, they will be either re-elected if a new team sitting around the table. We have a 10-year plan, which we call the long-term plan, and that sets out a lot of projects that this council is wishing to have completed over the next 10 years. And when the new council comes in the second year, they get to redo that plan and have a look at it from cover to cover and see what new things they would like to put in and see if there's anything that they would like to take out. So there's 10 years planning, but a new council can change things when they come in. Yep.
Excellent. And it would be probably quite fair to say, Kathy, when we developed the 10-year plan last year, that a big part of that plan was in and around drinking water improvements and infrastructure that we knew we needed to do to meet the new upcoming standards. And you'll see that's a big driver of what's happening in this next financial year as well. Righto, folks, that looks like that's all we've got time for tonight. If you want to know more or have feedback on what we've discussed, please visit the Our Place website and let us know. It's ourplace.nz. We also have a series of community meetings around the district, which offer another opportunity for you to ask our staff and elected members questions about the draft annual plan. On Monday, the 11th of April, we will be at the Ashburton Event Centre. The following day, on Tuesday the 12th of April, we're in Methven at the Mount Hutt Memorial Hall. And on Wednesday the 13th of April, our final community meeting will be held in the Rakaia Bowling Club in Rakaia. All of those evenings start at 7 p.m, and we do hope to see you there. If you can't make the meetings, we have prepared explainer documents for Ashburton, Methven and Rakaia. which give an overview of what is happening to the rates in each of these respective communities. These are available online now alongside the full draft annual plan. Thank you to our panel, and thanks so much to you all for joining us at home. We hope you got a lot out of this session and you found it useful, and we encourage you to have your say before submissions close on Friday the 6th of May. Ka kite, good night.